Hi there, my name is Trevor, and I've lived in my neighborhood for 10 years now, and for the most part, it's been great. The houses are nice, the people are friendly, and it's quiet. To be honest, it's pretty much a picture-perfect place to live. If I had a family, it would definitely be a place that I would love to raise my children. It felt like a sanctuary of sorts. At least it did until Conrad moved in. Conrad was something incredibly unusual. I mean, I've heard stories of people having bad neighbors, but I had always just suspected that the stories were overblown and that no one could really be that bad. But oh boy, Conrad made me realize that such bad neighbors actually existed. And it wasn't just that he was a bad neighbor. Nope, it was worse than just being bad. He was the kind of neighbor that makes you seriously consider moving just to get away from him. So much so that you would even be willing to lose money on the sale of your house just to get away from him even faster. The first time I met him, he was standing in his front yard, chugging a beer at 9 a.m., wearing nothing but a pair of stained sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked at me like I was a cockroach that had wandered into his kitchen. "You the guy next door?" "Yeah, sort of. I'm Trevor. I live across the street." "Nice to meet." "Yeah, whatever. Don't expect me to be all neighborly or any of that crap. Just stay out of my business." "Oh, that's okay. I just thought I would welcome you to the neighborhood." "Yeah, whatever." And that was the warmest interaction I ever had with him. It was clear that he wasn't much of a people person. In fact, I would go so far as to say that he was incredibly abrasive. Conrad had 5 dogs. Not friendly family pets. These were loud, untrained, and aggressive mutts that barked at everything and anything that moved. He kept them in his backyard, never walked them, barely fed them, and when he did, it was just scraps thrown into the dirt. They were miserable, and they let everyone know it by barking at all hours of the day and night. But that wasn't the worst part. He didn't like picking up after them either. Instead of dealing with their mess, he'd scoop it up with a shovel and fling it into his neighbors' yards, especially Isabel's. Isabel was the nicest person you could ever meet. She lived right next to Conrad and across from me as well, and for reasons I couldn't understand, Conrad seemed to hate her. Maybe it was because she was everything he wasn't: polite, kind, well-liked. Maybe he just enjoyed making people miserable. I lost count of how many times I saw her outside, angrily cleaning up after Conrad's disgusting habit.
"This is ridiculous. I'm gonna kill that man."
"Is he still throwing his dog's crap in your yard?"
Every single day. I've called animal control. I've called the police. I've talked to him. Nothing changes. I feel so bad for those poor dogs. You know he kicks and starves them too."
"I'm not surprised. He's so mean to everyone. I had no doubt that he was cruel to his animals too. I wish someone would do something." She wasn't exaggerating. The authorities had been called on Conrad more times than I could count, but nothing ever stuck. He knew how to skate just under the law, just enough to be a menace, but not enough to get arrested. But the dog poop? That was just the beginning. Sometimes it felt like Conrad had declared war on the neighborhood. For one thing, Conrad didn't believe in property lines. He'd mow a strip of grass into Isabel's yard just to be petty, and he would have the blade of his lawnmower set so low that basically ripped up the grass. If he saw someone outside, he'd crank his music up so loud that you could hear it from 3 houses away, just to see the reaction of annoyance on people's faces. If a package was left on your porch for too long, it had a way of mysteriously disappearing. There was even one time that I caught him peeing on Isabel's roses. He was incredibly drunk and barely able to stand, but there he was. And yes, you read that correctly. "Conrad, what the hell are you doing? Watering the flowers? Got a problem with it?" "Yes, it's the middle of the day and you're drunk and exposing yourself. What if any children walked by?" "Well then, I guess they would get to see a good show. Listen, I do what I want, when I want to. And if you don't like it, then I'll kick your ass." I had many problems with it. I swear, he just took delight in causing chaos. Then, one day, Isabel came to me with tears in her eyes.
"He hit one of his dogs so badly that I think he broke one of their legs."
"He did what?"
"I saw it. It wouldn't stop barking, so he kicked it so hard it yelped and ran into the fence. Since then, it's been limping around the backyard and whimpering."
I tried my best to console her. Seeing that must have been hard to take and know that nothing would happen if we called animal control again. It was then that I had had enough. That was it. I could put up with his garbage. I could put up with his obnoxious behavior. But I couldn't put up with animal abuse. That's the last straw. We're going to do something about this. That night, Isabel came over, and we talked for hours about what we could do to fix the problem that was Conrad, and we decided that drastic measures needed to be taken in order to get Conrad out of our lives. At first, we started small. Petty things, really. Isabel and I started filing noise complaints every single day that Conrad would violate the city's noise bylaws, and that was pretty much every single day. We filled out reports with animal control non-stop, always making sure that they went over and investigated thoroughly. I also installed a motion sensor and a remote-controlled air horn so that that blasted an ear-piercing alarm whenever he stepped onto my property. But none of it made him stop. If anything, he got worse. After a few times hearing the alarm, he went home and grabbed his gun and shot the sensor. Until I realized what was happening, I thought my house was under attack, and of course the police refused to do anything. After that, we escalated things in the hopes that it would have more of an impact on him and his antics. One night, Isabel and I crept into his backyard. It was disgusting. Overgrown weeds, trash everywhere, and 5 miserable dogs chained up near a rusted-out shed. We unchained them all and led them to my truck. I had already found people willing to adopt them, people who would actually care for them and also give them the socialization that they desperately needed. The last dog, a scrawny mutt with sad eyes, hesitated before getting into the truck. I knelt down and whispered, "You're free now, buddy. I'll make sure that you go to a good home where they'll actually take good care of you." We drove them out of town, far enough away that Conrad would never find them. Then we waited. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Conrad screaming, "Who took my dogs? Who stole them?" He went door to door, pounding on houses, demanding answers. Isabel and I played dumb, but we could see it in his eyes. He suspected us. Days later, Conrad's paranoia reached its peak. He started accusing people of spying on him. He set up cameras around his house, cheap ones, the kind you buy from shady websites. He also started leaving weird notes in Isabel's mailbox. Half the time they were just vague threats, while the other half, they weren't legible as he had written them when he was too drunk. Then one night, I saw him sneaking around Isabel's house with a gas canister. I watched from my window, heart pounding, as he crept to the side of her house and started pouring gasoline along the wall. I grabbed my phone and called the police. Then I grabbed my bat. By the time I made it outside, he was standing there with a lighter in his hand and cackling like a madman. "Put it down, Conrad. You don't want to do that. You took them. I know it was you. You and the bitch that lives here. Well, you two put your noses where they didn't belong. They're better off without you, you sick freak. You weren't even taking care of them. Now put the lighter down before you do something you'll regret." The police arrived just as he flicked the lighter on, and they ordered him to drop it. And of course, he didn't. Instead, he lunged at one of the officers. I'm not sure what he thought he was going to do, but he was intent on tearing the officer's limbs off. What happened next was quick. Isabel, hearing the commotion, came outside and clearly didn't know what was going on. The officers tackled him, but Conrad fought like a rabid animal. He swung, bit, kicked. He even tried to grab one of their guns. That was the last mistake he ever made. A shot rang out, and afterwards, Conrad finally laid still. Then silence. Isabel and I stood in stunned shock as the officers checked for a pulse. There wasn't one. "He's gone!" I couldn't believe what I was hearing or seeing, but after that night, things finally returned to normal. The police ruled it self-defense, and no one was charged with anything. After all, Conrad had a long list of past offenses, and everyone knew he was unstable. Eventually, the bank repossessed his house and then listed it was sold, and his memory faded from the neighborhood like a bad dream. The young couple that bought it, thankfully, are a much better fit for the neighborhood, and everyone is happy living next to them. One evening, Isabel and I sat on her porch, drinking wine, feeling grateful that the nightmare that was Conrad was no longer hanging over our lives.
We did it. We actually survived that lunatic.
Yeah, but I still feel bad for those dogs.
They're safe now. That's what matters.
That's true. Well, cheers to those dogs and their new loving families. I thought about everything we had done. The small pranks, the stolen dogs, the revenge. I didn't regret any of it. Because sometimes bad people don't change. Sometimes they don't learn their lesson. And sometimes, karma just needs a little push. I don't know about you, but I'm just glad we never have to hear that bastard's voice again.
I'll drink to that.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.